Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about Hereditary, a film we watched last night, one that haunted me for a long time after I first saw it, so I decided to show it to you. And you are way more squeamish with horror films, so it was a difficult, anxiety-inducing process.
It wasn't that bad.
It was bad. For me, it was stressful, but
It was stressful, yes.
there were a lot of comparisons at the time of Hill House to Hereditary, which I thought were strange. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but mostly we're just going to talk about our experience with the film. We'll start out with non-spoilers, then we'll get into spoilers later. So, and we haven't talked at all about this. It's kind of exciting because we watched the film last night and then just said, nope, went to bed, didn't talk about it. What did you think of the film? What was your experience?
I thought it was pretty good. I thought that it was very well made. I thought some parts were scarier than others. Part of it felt like I was watching a horror film, and other part of it felt like I was watching a documentary. You know, it was kind of like my emotions weren't all like up and down because I didn't feel like it was like horror all the way through.
It wasn't like watching a normal horror movie. It was like a bit off.
No, exactly. It was a bit off. I would recommend it though still. Made me feel happy that I watched it, even though my happiness in this case was depression. But, you know.
Well, I saw it, the first time I saw it, I was very depressed for like a week after it because it covers a lot of difficult themes. It has one scene in particular that was very shocking, and did not expect it coming. And I think you were a little more prepared for the film because I kind of warmed it up, kind of like, this is very disturbing. It was hard for me to watch it the first time, and I wasn't excited to watch it again because the first time I watched it, it just, for whatever reason, it just really hit me right in the gut. So I was nervous to see how she would react. You took it pretty well. There was one scene in particular I kind of wanted to record you to see your reaction, but I didn't because you would have noticed and you would have got mad. So
I screamed in one scene to the point where
there was a lot where you closed
Sedona,
your eyes. Yeah, there were the whole ending of the movie you didn't watch.
I didn't. Okay, yeah, it was a very interesting movie. I felt like it was more about a dysfunctional family. I really wanted the parents to be divorced so bad. So without getting into the spoiler section, I really felt bad for the dad. The mom was super annoying. Almost wish she would die earlier. And the grandmother was just Satan, figuratively. So, you know.
To me, the scariest...
And the children, I just wanted to hug.
Well, one of them.
Both.
Oh, okay. Well, see, for me, the scariest scenes in the movie are the dramatic scenes. The scenes with the mom and the family when they're dealing with grief and that stuff. Because it's so realistic. And then the supernatural stuff, elements, it made that all the more grounded and feel real. So I think that's what was so disturbing to me. And also, it doesn't feel like a typical horror film. For me, I'm totally scared the whole time watching this movie because things feel off. You feel like it's unpredictable, especially after that one scene. Everything feels off, like you don't know what could happen until the ending scenes, when to me it felt like more of a typical horror film, and great imagery, and the performances are just incredible. Toni Collette plays the mom, and the kid who plays Peter.
Yeah. Really good.
So good.
I thought the dad was really good too.
He had less to do, but yeah.
Well, that's good. What I'm saying. He was good at what because he felt like he kind of had the hardest part in a lot of sense because he was internalizing a lot, whereas every other character was externalizing so much. Like him and the daughter was internalizing a lot.
The relationship between the mom and the son was done so well and was so intense, and I love the little details that come out. Slowly we start to realize the family is way less normal than they first appear, and just little elements start to come about, and the things the mom says start to come out when she goes to group therapy or when she talks to a friend. You're just wait, what?
Or
she did
when,
what?
When she sleepwalks.
The sleepwalking.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into.
It felt like it was part horror but part more of documentary in a sense of a cult, a more dysfunctional family, how it's I watch a lot of different documentaries when I watch The Vow or when I watch Scientology, and it's just seems like this family is so vulnerable because of the dysfunction that they have. It makes sense to me without saying the ending why it ended the way it did. Because they totally didn't have each other's back at all.
Well, this is something I want to talk about because a lot of horror movies these days are really less about horror than they are about traumatic things. And horror has always been like that, but I mean the A24 style of horror that's kind of taken over these days, the Mike Flanagan type of horror. What to you makes this distinct from those other types of movies where it's like, yeah, they're dealing with grief and trauma and real things, but there's also a supernatural element? I mean, Hill House is very much like that.
Yeah.
So how do you find the comparisons there, and what kind of tonally is different to you?
Oh, well, I really like, it's interesting that you said the Hill House, because I almost forgot about it while I was watching the movie. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
And then, but now that you bring it back up, I can see why it was comparable to that. It's filmed completely differently. You know, the director of that show and the director of this movie is just, they have different styles.
But it's very, like, clean style and very mannered.
That's true. But I think that Mike Flanagan's work is more directed towards even, like, hyper focus on emotions and ghosts. Like, Mike Flanagan's work is a lot about, like, trauma as ghosts itself, where you confuse real ghosts to trauma ghosts. I don't think that's the case in this film at all.
I think you're a little off here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me how.
Because I think that the main difference is that there's that warm, mushy center at the heart of Mike Flanagan that is the sentimentality. And I think the difference is Hereditary, it's not telling you what to think about anything. There's no silver lining. There's no, hey, but this is actually like the people coming and overcoming their grief and everything and finding this kind of heart and center. In Hill House, in Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, there's always some kind of overwhelming philosophy that you feel the writer trying to express. He has something to say about the world, about how we live our lives, about the afterlife, you know? He has a very clear point of view. I feel like Hereditary is way more scary and upsetting because clearly the writer-director is not trying to tell you anything.
The writer-director is just saying it is trying to tell something. I felt like he was telling me that world is effed up. That was it. Like, I just think that Mike Flanagan
I think you could take many
more
interpretations from
What
that.
other interpretation would you make of the ending?
Well, we'll talk about that. We can talk about that after in spoilers.
All right.
But I think you can really read so much out of the film and interpret what you want. But I think what makes it way more effective is that, like, there are monologues, right, in Hereditary. There are scenes where the mom is talking about her past and history. I never once felt like the writer was speaking through the characters.
There's only one monologue, really.
Yeah, but at any point, the writer...
Like two monologues.
The writer is never trying to say something about the world or about how we live, etc., through the characters. At all times, I felt like I was just watching this family in a real situation trying to live and get through this.
I completely disagree.
And it was up to us to interpret what was happening and how we can put our own worldview onto the film.
That is not true. I think that you're misinterpreting the fact that the director portrays the whole movie as hopeless to him not trying to say something. He's definitely trying to say something. He's saying that some families are just effed up.
Okay, but at what point did any of the characters actually say that? Because in a Mike Flanagan film, that's what would happen. They'd say, well, I guess things are just fucked up. That never happens in this film.
Well, I feel like that's partly true.
It's entirely true.
It's partly true. But I have to tell, let's go to the spoiler section because I'm going to tell you why it's not all the way true.
Spoilers, go ahead.
Okay, so it's not all the way true because Peter accidentally is involved in his sister, Charlie, dying, and basically she gets beheaded. Peter's mom tells Charlie and Peter to
go to the party
together. It's Peter's party.
And she has a nut allergy. She has a piece of cake with nuts.
She has a nuts allergy. She eats a piece of cake. Her throat's closing up, so Peter desperately tries to rush her to the hospital. But then because Charlie can't breathe, she opens the window and then she tries to put her head out so that she can feel more air because she feels suffocated.
Then there's an animal on the road.
There's a dead deer on the road, and then Peter swerves, and when he swerves, Charlie's head literally violently gets beheaded from a pole. He, traumatized, just drives home with a beheaded sister.
He's stunned. He's not able to
process it.
Yeah,
and then he goes to sleep. The next morning, Peter's mom and dad discover the beheaded daughter of theirs. Peter's mom is changed forever. The whole family is changed forever. They recently lost a grandmother. The mom blames Peter, and there's this dinner scene where she basically tells Peter that it's his fault, he should apologize, she'll never forgive him, calls him entitled in many ways when he's clearly grieving and having a really hard time. I felt like this is why you're partly wrong. Because of that dinner scene, you're still understanding that some kind of dynamic, you're still going into the heart of the story, just like Mike Flanagan's work.
No, because what are they saying about the worldview or philosophy in that scene?
I feel like
they're just acting like characters. They're letting off steam with each other.
I feel like I see why you're saying that, but I also feel like the fact that they're interacting in such a manner says about the world, a very cynical world, especially because the grandmother, before she passed away, she passes away a couple weeks before the daughter passes away, Charlie passes away, we find out at the very end that she was involved in a cult, which it's hinted at, by the way, throughout the movie. And so she volunteers her own granddaughter to be possessed by a demon so that they can all get wealthy. That whole storyline, I feel like, shows that the director is saying that this is a very cynical world. It portrays a very hopeless thing. I just feel like you're saying it because, like, in Mike Flanagan's work, like, sometimes the characters are directly saying that.
That's exactly what I'm saying. That's the difference.
But it's indirectly saying it in this movie,
okay,
too.
You can interpret that from the film, but the writer is not at any point telling you that this is what you should be taking from this scene.
But
there's no, hey, this is what you should be gathering philosophically from this scene. This is the message of the scene. This is the point of this scene, and this is how you should read it. I don't like it when they're saying, hey, this is the one way to see this scene. This is how you should be interpreting it.
Do you really feel like, with it being portrayed that way, that there's multiple ways to see that scene? What other way could you see that scene?
You can read it so many different ways.
Tell me.
Okay, so you're saying you read the scene, you see the scene of the characters arguing, and you say, okay, this is clearly just a cynical, hopeless world.
It's like if I slap you.
I read that scene.
It's like if I slap you. There's really little other ways to interpret that except that I'm abusing you.
I don't think you're making sense, because you asked me, okay, what else could you interpret from that scene? Well, you learn first off about the characters a lot more. You learn about the mom, you learn about the way grief is and how they are fighting each other and trying to find blame. And you see the dynamics of their family, how the dad, who is more passive, is trying to hold it together, but he's clearly not doing a good job. The son is in so much pain, although he blames himself. Both characters, in a way, blame themselves, but are taking it out on each other.
Do you really feel like the mom blames herself as much as she blames her son?
She blames her son more, and that's why she's the worst person, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And
so how's that interpretable?
But I'm telling you, it's you can interpret it however you want. At no point in the scene do they say something about how the world is evil inherently.
I understand that, but that is not the point that I'm making. I'm saying because
that's the point I'm making.
All right.
Like, you can interpret whatever you want from either story. Like, you can interpret it.
But I'm trying to say that, like,
it's less didactic. It's less telling.
The whole show leaves little room for multiple, diverse level of interpretation. Therefore, when you're saying that Mike Flanagan is always, like, being philosophical, I'm saying he's being directly philosophical, but whereas this director in Hereditary, he's being indirectly philosophical.
Yeah, which I like more.
Okay, so are we in agreement?
Yeah, we're in agreement here.
All right. You guys just witnessed a very dysfunctional dynamic between us.
It's called healthy disagreements.
You don't like very philosophical.
No. I like the philosophy and stuff, but I like when it's done in a believable way and when it's not told to us, but rather expressed to us in the story. But what I like about, what I don't like necessarily about Mike Flanagan is this overly simple kind of moralizing or, like, trying to get to the heart of the story in a very didactic way.
That's exactly what I like about Mike Flanagan's work, is he simplifies.
Yeah.
I don't think he oversimplifies, but I think he simplifies human emotion in a way that makes it very intriguing to watch. And I understand, like, as humans, we're very complex creatures. Our wants and our needs as people are not that complex as we portray it. And I think that's what really Mike Flanagan's work is really saying. Whereas this movie, you're right, it does kind of, like, go into more complexity of each character. But I don't think it's that complex, because I saw the mom as a little bit of monstrous, dysfunctional mother. I just felt like she was very selfish. She was in a very dysfunctional marriage because of her, because she would go to movies and she would just not tell her husband like where she's going. She would go to like a group therapy and things like that, which nothing is wrong with. She just lost her mom, then she lost her daughter. But she just has a hard time accessing her own emotions, and that's what that really shows, that she can't even tell her husband, who we don't see anything contrary to being him being very supportive of her, but yet she cannot express her emotions to him. It's always about her. When she grieves her daughter, she doesn't for once like ask her husband how he's doing. You know, it's all about her process. Did you feel like the characters were complex?
Absolutely. I felt like they were way more believable, and I felt like they were real.
Why don't you go more into that?
Well, they were behaving and acting like consistent with their characterization.
Do you feel like the characterization was dynamic?
Yeah, absolutely.
How so?
The way that they are dealing with multiple issues, grief. The mom is she's traumatized from her past. We know that she was raised by a horrible person, and she feels like she does not have control over her own family, over how they were raised. She has lost trust with her family and continues to lose trust as she goes. And there are times when she is correct about the conspiracy that she's uncovering about the cult, and there are times when she is acting just abusive and can't be trusted or believed, or like when she tried to light her children on fire with paint thinner, right? So there is a lot of complexity to her character. I don't think she's just 100% villain. She becomes that, but I think that there's this complexity to her that's very realistic.
But how is that different from the complexity seen in Mike Flanagan's work, for example, The Hill House, where
there's plenty of complexity.
The children,
yeah,
you see the past. It's just that we're directly able to see the past, present, and future.
It's a little more like showing you very specifically like this, then that. Whereas this, it's a little more open to interpretation, I think. Like, that's fine because there's way more time.
Because we're not actually seeing, for example, the mom's past.
No.
We're just being told about it and from her. So therefore, you're saying because visually the director doesn't portray her past, you can imagine different ways in which her past was...
I think that there's a lot of complexity in Hill House and Mike Flanagan's work. Of course, the characters, there's some great characters, great characterization and stuff. I think that at the end of the day, what happens in Mike Flanagan's work is that there's the sentimentality and there is a kind of warmth at the end and a kind of like things will work out okay. Characters meet resolutions.
Not always.
Not always, but for the most part. And there are heroes. There are heroes and villains. And there are really heroic moments and people doing...
It's more wholesome.
It's more wholesome. There's more, the dad ends up becoming beloved. He does the right thing, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
The good and the bad... Good is good, bad is bad. It's very Stephen King in that way. There's good and evil. This, I personally find that entertaining. I think it's totally fine to enjoy that kind of stuff. I love Stephen King, and I think it's great. I don't personally find it scary. I think that this is way more scary because I think it's more realistic and more reflective of the kind of world that we live in, regularly. So, to me, Hereditary is way scarier. I think you can argue that one is better than the other. Like, it comes down to taste, of course. Like, if you like this kind of filmmaking that Mike Flanagan does better and the type of writing better, that's totally great. I personally don't lock in with the way he writes and his worldview and the way he does characterization. I think it's a bit on the nose, but that's okay, for other people. Like, I personally like Hereditary because it's way open, and to me it's just scarier because there's no heroes or villains, there's no resolution that is very like everything's right in the world. It's just kind of like shit is fucked up, by the end.
Yeah, I can see that.
So
I agree
it's just scarier
with
to me in that sense.
I agree with that. I just don't think that the lack of extra monologues in Hereditary says that it's less philosophical.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Well, let's take this plot back a little bit and kind of talk about the overarching story that doesn't become revealed until the end. Now, I watched this the second time, so I was able to see a little bit more of the clues and like what's actually going on behind the scenes that our character the mom finally uncovers near the end, which is this cult conspiracy. So basically what has happened is, and the grandmother who dies in the beginning is like this cult leader. Basically, they're trying to summon this demon called Paimon.
To get wealthy.
Yeah, but it's implied that her son, the older son, the mom's son, he was kind of kept away from the grandmother at a young age because the grandmother was abusive and they kind of split ties. But when the mom got older, she felt a little guilty for keeping her mom out of the kid's life. So she let the grandma be involved in Charlie's life, the daughter's life, which is why she's kind of messed up, and she has these visions. She sees like lights, and there's like creepy stuff going on with her. Basically, it's implied that Charlie was being groomed to be the body of this King Paimon.
Who's one of the 7 kings of hell.
Yes. So, or 8. What was it? 8 or 7?
7 or 8.
Yeah. So she is being groomed to be to embody this demon, and the grandma is doing that. So when the grandma dies, you kind of, and you start to see, when you rewatch it, you'll see like cult people like popping here and there. You can kind of see them smiling at the girl in the funeral. But what we see in the book that Annie reads is that Paimon wants a male host for some reason.
Because he's a sexist.
He wants a male host, and that means that all the females die. That's why Charlie gets decapitated, and then the grandma is decapitated. The mom decapitates herself at the end because he wants the male, the most vulnerable male in the family, which ends up being Peter. And
yeah,
it all becomes revealed basically at the very end when the cult finally like he finally gets possessed by Paimon, and then the cult kind of meets him up in their little tree house, and they go, "Hail Paimon."
A little background on the grandmother, I think, also just kind of go in the family history, is that the grandmother's husband dies. Apparently he starves himself or something, and then also her son commits suicide, but then writes a letter saying that his mom was trying to put something in him. So
he was schizophrenic.
Yeah, but then at the end, and when you understand the grandmother was voluntarily in the cult, it is questionable if those things actually happened by choice. It could be very possible, and it's most likely probable, that the grandmother tried to use them to get...
Yeah, maybe she was trying to use them to be the host because they were male.
Yeah, because that's what she tried to do with Charlie.
Yeah, and Charlie ended up dying, but she couldn't do it because she was female, and I think that the cult just kind of messed up. They did an oopsie there, you know.
Yeah, and then also, like, the grandmother, after she dies, the mom finds out this letter from the grandmother saying that you'll discover our sacrifices are worth it or something like that. So the grandmother was really, really
evil.
messed up.
True evil, yeah.
True evil. The mom
befriends
Joni,
who's part of the cult.
Who's part of the cult,
but we don't know
unbeknownst
that.
to her. Yeah, unbeknownst to her.
But she befriends Annie.
She befriends Annie. Not only was Joni part of the cult, she was also really good friends with the grandmother.
Yeah.
So she befriends Annie, uses her own grief to try to bond with her, tells Annie to come over,
teaches her about spiritualism, and does a kind of like a seance with her own kids. And Annie is like freaked out at first. I thought that was a very great scene.
And then she's very vulnerable. One night she wakes up, she has another sleepwalking session or whatever, and then she ends up bringing the spirit of her daughter.
Which the rest of her family is like freaked out.
The son is obviously very distressed about it or whatever else, but this opens up the way for one of the kings of hell to make it so that it's easier to possess Peter.
And what I like about how the show does it is that it's not all explicitly told to us. It's kind of like we have to follow the clues, and it's not like obvious, like in your face. There are little things here and there that are like off. You're trying to figure out what's happening until like the last scene. You can really finally piece it together. You pieced it together a little early because you're smart. But I was always like, when I watched it the first time, I was like, what is happening? What's going on? And finally you get to the last scene and it all makes sense and all the clues make sense. So it was just really done really well, and the mystery was really held you through, especially in the second half of the movie.
I was so annoyed.
Why?
Okay, because Annie, while you're looking at different clues, Annie goes back in the box of her mom's, and then she opens up this book of spiritualism or whatever, where it talks about one of the 7 kings of hell that they're trying to summon. It's highlighted and everything, and it literally says in there that there's a way to depossess.
I didn't see anything about unpossessing. All right, so she just looked up.
I just rewinded the film.
She went back to the scene, and it says, yes, once locked in, a new ritual is required to unlock the possession. So it's implied.
And it's highlighted. Can you say it's highlighted?
It's highlighted.
It's highlighted. So that's what made me mad.
But it doesn't say how to do the ritual.
No, but she doesn't even read the book to see.
Also, Paimon isn't locked in to any of the kids until the very end.
She tries to burn the book that her daughter
Is
drawing in.
Because the first time she tries to burn it, it lights a little bit on fire, and then her arm starts to light on fire. So she thinks she's somehow connected.
She has to extinguish it, and then her fire.
She's not really following all of this very well. She doesn't really get what's going on. She thinks that she's connected to the book, and that somehow, and she's like ranting and raving to her husband, who thinks she's going insane. So she is like, okay, I just need to burn the book, and maybe if I burn it and sacrifice myself, it will destroy me, the curse will be ended, and then Peter will be saved. Okay, yeah, maybe in a different type of horror movie, but not in this horror movie, because she's like, okay, she's trying to get her husband to throw it in the fire because she doesn't want to for some reason. She's like, just throw it in the fire, everything's going to be solved. I love you, I'm going to die.
She's so dramatic. She wants to burden her husband with the knowledge that he killed her.
So she finally gets fed up because he just thinks she's acting crazy, and then she throws the book in the fire, and he lights up on fire because it's just all evil. Like, there's just not really any reason to it. It's just like she's just totally off on her interpretation. If she had paid a little more attention maybe to
But that's the thing, it's highlighted in the book. It's literally highlighted, and then instead of like being like, oh, you can unlock the possession. Okay, so first of all, what I see from the highlighted section is that they need to lock the possession, which they haven't done yet. Okay, and then you can unlock the possession. Let me read more because this sounds freaking serious. I'm pretty sure devil guy is trying to possess my son. No, she just looks through it.
In a traditional horror film, this would be the third act where they find the books and they go, oh, this is how to undo the possession and save the family.
You know, when you're watching a horror film, it's like, why are you walking in there? Literally, you heard the noise from there. You know there's like serial killer out. Why are you walking towards the noise? Get yourself out of there. But no, the person's like, you know, that's what this is like, which makes it so annoying to me. It's like, why are you doing that? Like, you literally see it highlighted that you can unlock the possession, but no, let me do my own interpretation of what I don't understand, and by the way, I think that if I sacrifice myself, which isn't true, that I can save my son, but instead of me sacrificing myself, I'm going to tell my husband to sacrifice me because, you know, it's just more dramatic that way.
But nobody even believes her at all. She's lost all credibility with her family. So, like, what is she supposed to do?
Well, she just literally, it doesn't matter to her. She just thinks that calling the police isn't going to work. She just thinks that, okay, the only thing that will work is for her to throw this book of her daughter's drawing in the fire. And then because of her previous experience with trying to throw the book in the fire, she thinks that she'll be inflamed and then she'll die, but it's a sacrifice she's willing to make. All good. Except she's wrong, but all good. Why are you asking your husband, who's already traumatized enough, to do it for you? Like, I don't understand. Why would you want him to live with that guilt? This is what I don't like about the mom. She's freaking evil too in a lot of ways. Like, she freaking tells her son that it's his fault for accidentally being part of this manslaughter with her daughter, and her son is really messed up. She sleepwalks and tells her son that she basically didn't want to have him. Why would you say that to your son who's already stressed? Granted, we see that it's a sleepwalking dream sequence, but this is something that you can clearly tell by the way that she is portraying herself, that she means. It's just the mom is all around bad, and that's why the son ends up getting possessed at the end. He doesn't have that support system, and then literally the devil goes after a very vulnerable male host. That's why he's really vulnerable, because he's just effed up because of his mom. His dad is also very sensitive and literally on the edge. He doesn't know what to do because he loves his wife way too much, but at the same time he sees the hurt that she's causing the whole family, but he doesn't have the willpower to stand up against her. So there you go. Now you can talk.
I think, the mom definitely doesn't know how to handle the situation and handles it poorly.
Because of how selfish the mom is, I just really felt like the writer, the director weren't giving me many options to interpret it any other way than she is a horrible person. I mean, the movie itself is messed up because the parts when I closed my eyes were two parts. When the bird dies and Charlie beheads the dead bird, I can't watch that. So when the mom's chasing
when she's possessed
Peter,
by Paimon.
When the mom is possessed, and she is chasing Peter, and she tries to behead herself by just... She does behead herself.
And you see the cult members up there in the attic, and then Peter jumps out the window and lands on the ground, and you don't see her head fall off, but you actually hear it. I noticed this time you hear her going, shh, 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 and then there's like a pause, and then and then right after that you see the glowing light come onto Peter's back and then disappear on him. It's like immediately after she killed herself and Paimon got out of her body, he went right into Peter's body.
Yeah.
So you can kind of just see the... And, you know, it's called Hereditary. It's about, like, the hereditary evil, like, what gets passed from generation to generation. And Annie was a person who could not cut off the evil for her own family, you know? And in a way, that's a very interesting way to interpret it. It's like her mother was evil. She tried to keep her mother out of her life, but she ended up infecting her family and brought this literal evil into the family, and it just carried on generationally. And that's to me, that's like the overarching...
I think the overarching message is have boundaries with toxic people in your family before they infect you as well.
I think that, yeah, like, clearly, there's definitely, like, a lot of deeper stuff going on.
Do you recommend it
Yes,
still?
absolutely.
Okay.
If you have the stomach for it, I mean, if you watch this far, you watch spoilers already. So, of course, it's a great movie. Like, we actually haven't seen Midsommar. Maybe we should watch that. Yeah, it's great. Recommend us any more horror movies or shows or something. We like horror movies, but anything we're willing to watch and talk about because we like having a good debate.
Yes, as you can see. Also, one thing that I really liked about the movie is that the dog does not die.
Yeah, that was really refreshing because that's such a stupid cliche in horror movies.
I
like,
hate
it's
that.
so predictable. The second we see a dog in a horror movie, you're like, okay, when is the dog gonna die? But yeah, nothing happened to the dog.
All right,
Just
well,
the kids.
just the kids. Better humans than dogs. That is our interpretation, our healthy little debate session. Put recommendations down below. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next week. Have a good one, everyone.